If you're a console gamer, you know that feeling of excitement when a new generation begins and you can finally replace that old technology that's in your living room whose vents are filled with dust. But what if the new consoles haven't entirely won you over? What if there aren't any new games to really twist your arm, and some of the sacrifices made for the new systems are a deal breaker? Well, about a year ago my Xbox One was getting long in the tooth. After upgrading to a large 4K TV, its visuals were looking kinda pitiful. Keep in mind, many of its games had sub-HD resolutions, which wasn't going to cut the mustard in the 2020s. But anyone who tried upgrading to a Series X or PS5 during the COVID pandemic knew it was a fool's game. Local stores seemed to be forever out of stock, and scalpers took advantage of this chronic market shortage, selling the consoles with absurd price markups.
We wish you the very best out there this holiday season, snagging one of these consoles, because it is hard.
But even those lucky enough to snag one for a reasonable price quickly come to realise that the provided 1TB of internal storage doesn't last long. It just takes about 3 Call of Duties to fill it up, literally. Previous Xboxes allowed you to store and run your games from basically any external hard drive. Once you max out the storage on your brand new Series X, however, your only option to play native games is a proprietary SSD, which is approximately £200 for 1TB, which is excessive considering that's like half the price of the console itself.
At least we get
2 TB of storage.
Actually, that's only with a deposit of 300 or more.
And so with all this in consideration, I wasn't ready to make the leap to the Series X. I was initially tempted by Microsoft's budget alternative, the Series S, because although it wasn't much of a graphical powerhouse, it boasted quick load times and improved performance at a much more reasonable cost. However, its lack of a disk drive meant my existing physical library would be unplayable. And so if I wanted to stay within the Xbox ecosystem, at this stage for me, the new generation was basically a write-off. But there was one other option, the Xbox One X. Initially codenamed Scorpio, it was a hardware refresh from 2017, quite late in the generation, but at the time it was the most powerful console in the world. It apparently offered improvements to a number of high-profile games, and I thought maybe it could tide me over until I had a better reason to upgrade to the Series X. The console originally retailed for about £430, which is almost the same price that the Series X sells for today, which was quite steep for what was essentially an iterative or mid-generation upgrade. But today, the One X can now be picked up for approximately £150, pre-owned condition of course. I found one on Facebook, offered the guy £130, and he not only accepted, but actually delivered it to my door. And sure, I was skeptical as to whether it would actually do anything to revitalise my interest in console gaming, but for the price I paid, it was worth a punt. And here is that console. This is the Xbox One X, and as you can see, they've taken the footprint of the original Xbox One and they've just shrunk it right back down. And that's even while getting rid of the power brick, which you had with every previous Xbox. And this time, it's all built in, so it's amazing how they've managed to cram everything into this one unit, which is actually pretty slim. It's one of the smallest Xboxes, besides the Series S, which is just a little bit shorter. Now this is the Scorpio edition, which is the same basically in functionality, but it's got a nice design. You've got a Scorpio logo there, and then you've got a pattern going along the top with a slight gradient. It's a really good looking console, so if you can get one for the same sort of price, I would recommend it. Well, upon signing into the console, it straight away mirrored everything from my old Xbox. All my apps, games, groups and subscriptions, and then I plugged in my external hard drive and all my games from there showed up as well, without any fuss. I'd never had an easier console setup. But I wanted to see what this thing was capable of, so I popped in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a game which looked a bit on the rough side on the original Xbox One. So as it was one of the Scorpio enhanced games, it seemed like a good one to test. Nothing could prepare me for experiencing it on the One X. The game runs in a jaw-dropping 4K resolution. Even the textures are higher res, the crowds are denser, but the star of the show is the draw distance. You can literally see NPCs in the faraway villages going about their daily routines. You can see ships travelling between the distant islands and battling on the ocean. Wild animals roaming across the vast mountain ranges. Odyssey is one of hundreds of games that were retroactively enhanced for the One X. Not all enhancements were quite as thorough as this one. Some just had resolution boosts, but that's nothing to scoff at. It's amazing to think that the difference between the base Xbox and the One X is so drastic that a game like Battlefront 2 runs at a meager 720p on the base model and then a full fat 4K on the Scorpio. It uses an adaptive resolution to maintain solid performance, but in general, in the middle of a heated gunfight or saber fight, you're not going to notice a small dip in pixel count all that much. And I'm sorry if the video doesn't do justice, but the level of detail and quality on display here is pretty amazing. All this 4K gameplay footage I recorded on this £130 console. Can I just emphasize that for a second? So many games look spectacular on it. Far Cry to Riders Republic, Cyberpunk to Ghost Recon Wildlands, Call of Duty Modern Warfare to Final Fantasy 15. PC has always had the edge for playing older games because of mods and the community patches, but here you have a system where the developers themselves have gone back to improve older games for it. I think that's unprecedented. And better still, these games look basically as good as they do on my £1,500 PC. How's that for some sobering perspective? I spend $400 just on the graphics card alone. Fuck. But if I had to pick one game that really blew me away on this console, it's Red Dead Redemption 2. Now I love this game already on the Xbox One, but I never realised just how much its low resolution obscured its finer details, because launching it on the One X, you're greeted with some of the most stunning visuals you've ever seen. Even if you're on a high-end gaming PC, this is still up there. The rustling forest trees, the vast mountain ranges, immersive, living, breathing towns, all rendered in 4K. Honestly, if this game had never been out before and just released in this state today, everyone would be saying this is true next gen, because that's how it looks and feels, and I don't think any other game has such intricate and meticulous attention to detail like this. Whether it be when you're skinning an animal and literally seeing the bullet holes after you take off the pelt, or even the way mud and snow deforms when you walk over it. In fact, it's the only game I can think of where you can see a non-playable character cutting up their dinner piece by piece. Not that it matters, but it's pretty groundbreaking stuff. The point that I'm not making very well is that many games released over the last decade are still technically and graphically impressive. They just need touching up here and there. And a resolution boost is often all they required, and the Xbox One X represents the lowest cost of entry to experience that. But I don't want to just focus on the retroactive improvements, because more or less every game that came out on Xbox consoles after 2018 was essentially enhanced for the Xbox One X. If the game was ported from PC, the base Xbox console would get something resembling low-medium settings, while the One X would resemble something closer to higher settings or very high settings. You could usually expect them to target 4K resolution. If not native, then usually something like 2K upscaled, but you'd usually have some other visual improvements like increased draw distance, improved textures, and sometimes better performance, but we'll get back into this in a moment. In any case, the Xbox One X was the best console to play these games. But here's the thing. Everything that ran on the Xbox One base console runs on the Xbox One X, and that includes all the select Xbox Original and Xbox 360 games that ran via backwards compatibility. But playing these on your Xbox One X comes with similar benefits as its native games, which is to say enhanced visuals. So some of your favourites from the original Xbox or the 360 now run with 4K resolution or even an unlocked frame rate. So my beloved Oblivion is no longer a sub-HD stuttery mess, it is now brought to full 4K and it's way smoother. And then you have games like The Force Unleashed, which has aged incredibly well and it does not look 2 generations old. There's so much going on in its environments, there's dramatic scenes playing out all around you, it still has surprisingly good texture detail and high polygon counts and loads of detailed foliage. It just goes to show that many console games were held back by their resolution to keep performance steady, and with the Xbox One X you can realise their full potential and see them for how they really should look. Also, the Red Dead series gets another mention in this video because Red Dead Redemption 1 on the 360 is the game to try on backwards compatibility. Being a game from 2010, obviously it has its wonky elements here and there, but I have to say, in general, it really holds up so well, particularly with the lighting effects and the sunsets. It's still quite spectacular. And lacking a PC release, that means the Xbox One X or the Xbox Series X are the only ways you can experience this game in 4K. I briefly touched upon performance, but I should elaborate. You'll find that the standard frame rate of 30 FPS remains unchanged, but you'll find that the One X seems to generally perform better, hitting its frame rate target more consistently than previous models, even while pumping out these outrageously impressive graphics, normally with 4K and HDR. The aforementioned Red Dead Redemption 2's resolution is over 6 times what it was in the previous Xbox models. 6 times. Load times are unfortunately about the same as they were on previous models, but many players have found that it's dead easy to replace the stock internal hard drive with an SSD, And with this inexpensive upgrade, the system performs much closer to a series generation of console in terms of boot and load times. Okay, so clearly the One X is a very capable machine that gives the current gen consoles a run for their money. So the question is, are there any reasons to go for a Series S or a Series X over the Scorpio? Well, let's not be under any illusions. Even the budget-friendly Series S has two huge advantages over the One X, being its modern CPU and its NVMe SSD, which in tandem give it excellent performance for its price. However, the Series S generally won't let you take advantage of your 4K display, as it does not have the raw graphical power of the Scorpio. In fact, many of the enhancements from the One X made it to the Series X, skipping over the Series S entirely. And as mentioned at the beginning, external storage is a bit of a hidden cost with the Series consoles, and there's no way to play physical media on the Series S. Whereas the Series X has got you covered with both high frame rates as well as 4K content, but at a much higher cost, which only gets higher once you factor in that damned external SSD. But these consoles are the future, and the One X won't be supported forever. There are already games being released exclusively to the Series consoles and the PS5, so it's kind of a trade-off no matter which system you go for. But consider my perspective. I have an existing library of physical games, and I've been accustomed to having my digital games all stored locally, ready to play at any moment's notice. And I mean, I'm no graphics whore, but I do love a game with nice visuals, as long as the frame rate is at least 30 FPS. And well, for these reasons, the One X is an absolute dream. Keep in mind I sold my old Xbox One for £100, and I got this console for just £30 more. That's like half the price of a single video game these days. And for that small, insignificant cost, I've given my existing games library a whole new lease of life. This console has been a big factor in rekindling my love for console gaming in a big way. It's just given me so much incentive to try out more games as well as revisit a load of older ones. Ultimately, it's got me back into the Xbox ecosystem. But if Microsoft want me to join the current generation, they'll have to drag me kicking and screaming. Thank you for watching, guys. Alright, time to play some Resident Evil 4 on the Xbox One. Oh, you're kidding. Capcom, you bastards.